without further ado, here is my friend and the guest on A Productive Conversation, Steve Kamb. Steve, thanks for being
What's
here
up,
today.
Mike?
How's it going?
Dude, I'm so happy to be here.
So, first off, if any of you have questions during the recording today, you want to chime in, I can definitely add your questions to the mix. Steve will see them pop up here. Just in the lower corner, you'll be able to see them. Steve's got the Captain America shield in the background. I don't have my Green Lantern pillow on my chair like I usually do. But Steve and I have had many conversations about comic book nerdery. I'm going to talk to you about Dungeons and Dragons a little bit during our conversation today because that comes up in the book, as well as video games that I have yet to play. Elden Ring, I bought, suck at it. Baldur's Gate, I bought, suck at it. My son is the gamer, and he's trying to get me to do more. But this is the thing, Steve. My son, Colton, is now going on 16 years old. My daughter is in college in Montreal. I just saw she's 21.
Wow. Yeah, I was literally, I can remember the moment getting an email. I'm not kidding you. I think it was 16 years ago. And I was writing my blog. Remember blogs? I was writing a blog called Nerd Fitness. And I was like, I got an email from this guy who wants to interview me. And I remember like where I set it up at this kitchen table in my house with my two roommates, and told them all to be quiet so that I could do this interview. And that was the first interview I ever did with anything relating to the internet. So Mike, this is such a cool like full circle moment for me. And my God, what a life we have lived in between those 16 years.
Oh my goodness, man. Like, I mean, it's just weird to think that, we've gone through so many different things and we've tried so many different things over the years. And the book is called How to Try Again. So this is a perfect way to kind of segue into this. One of the things I noticed right off the top, I'm going to just kind of scroll through here because first off, I didn't realize that you knew as much about D&D I should have. When it comes to warlocks and the things that they make pacts. I actually asked my son about this. I'm like, is this really good? Oh, yeah. Because my son is DMing an entire campaign that he wrote right now. It's been going on for like a year and a half. And so can you tell me, as we get into things, the role of the pact in relation to this book and in relation to kind of where you're at right now, this kind of way that you're living a pact life?
Sure. So as I said, I started a website at this point 17 years ago called Nerd Fitness. And over that time, I've written articles, 1,000 articles. We've had tens of thousands of students move through various, workout programs that Nerd Fitness have. We have this coaching program where we've now coached 20,000 people in one-on-one coaching. And across all of this, over 17 years, we kept running into like the same, or like the most universal problem. And essentially, it comes down to the fact that like everybody has this all or nothing mindset when it comes to aspects of their life. Mm-hmm. The problem with all or nothing is that it becomes all then nothing, right? We have 2 or 3 great weeks and then your kid gets sick or work sucks or something happens and we get too busy. We say, you know what, I'll try again. I'll try later when I'm less busy or when life gets out of the way. So I wanted to write a book like specifically for what to do after those 3 weeks and after you have fallen back into that trap again for the 1,000th time. And that's where I came with this idea called the PACT. And I wanted it to be something so simple that you could remember. And as your brain starts to send you back into this all or nothing loop, you could say like, hold on, wait a second. That nerdy Steve guy told me to make a pact. Like, okay, let me do that. Pause, accept, change, try. And I wanted people to, and I provide stories for each of these examples, but really it's making sure you're trying at the right thing or at the correct thing for you. It's accepting the limitations of your life. It's changing and doing something different than you did last time so you don't end up with the same challenges that you did previous time. And then trying again with a different mindset. So, and as I was putting this together, one of my earlier readers or friends of mine is like, dude, you came up with PACT like warlocks, and I was like, oh yeah, D&D, right? Like it was almost like a divine intervention, I suppose, from Cthulhu or flying spaghetti monster or some demigod somewhere. But I came up with the PACT independently and had just played D&D recently, and then realized like, oh, I'm talking about a nerdy concept here about making a pact. and it all works together. This is perfect. I have to run with PACT as the framework.
So we mentioned earlier that we've been doing this for a while, and the one thing that I think when it comes to the idea of PACT that is the thing I think that people struggle with out of the gate is the pause, is that P, right? I mean, we've lived, and we'll speak specifically in the entrepreneurial space about like the pause is not respected. The pause is not promoted. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Like it's go, 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 fast, 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 now, now, now. Let's, like you said, the all or nothing. We must keep moving forward. If we take a break, someone's going to get in front of us. So how does someone, when they recognize that they are, kind of, when they're moving in a direction and they realize, oh, something's not working. And you mentioned in the book, like a bunch of things kind of like dominoes fell for you. And you're like, okay, the propensity is to start like putting things in place and just moving, doing some kind of motion. And in productivity parlance, it's what people do. If I just start doing something, then something right is going to happen instead of taking that pause. Why is the pause so important?
Yeah, I think I'm saying this as a recovering, I believe the term is insecure overachiever. So somebody who has grinded and tried to become more productive in the hopes that I would eventually feel enough or have enough or reach some mythical level of success and productivity nirvana that I have no problems. Shockingly, the faster I tried to get there, the more stressed out I became, the more efficient I was at driving myself crazy. And this is where that pause came in. Actually ended up firing myself from my own company because I realized I was trying to get more productive at the wrong thing. We'll get to that story in a minute. I think a lot of people, whether it's fitness, being more productive at work, trying to build a business, we chase progress at all costs. And we think if we're not making progress, then we're falling behind. And if we're falling behind, we're failures. There's like a third option that we're not considering here. There's progress moving forward. There's kind of like status quo, average, staying where we are. And then there's the opposite of progress, which is regress, like making things worse or throwing our energy at things that are actually not helpful for us and burning ourselves out on something that is not actually making any progress. So it might be using oh, hey, I post every day on Instagram because I saw some influencer tell me that I'm supposed to post every day on Instagram and that's how they got famous. But I hate Instagram, but I'm going to do it every day and I hate it. And weirdly, after a year, I'm burned out. I hate Instagram. I've made no growth, but I'm going to keep doing it because that's what I'm supposed to do. Um, I think there's a lot of us that do this in a lot of areas of business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
pausing and just slowing down and saying, like, is this working for me? Do I enjoy it? Am I seeing incremental improvement? Am I trying too hard in certain areas and burning myself out in others? We say this a lot at Nerd Fitness, but I think of what feels like a motivation problem, and we're trying to get ourselves to be more productive or do more things, is often a resources problem. Like we're asking way too much of ourselves. There's too much going on at home. Our bosses are putting too much crap on our plates. Whatever it is, like we need that pause, that take a breath and slow down, and instead of just keep going and trying again repeatedly, pausing and being like, wait a second, am I actually doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing on the path that feels right for me? Or are there other questions I should be asking right now?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's also interesting is that there's such a barrage of noise that the pause is like, it's not just a one-time thing. You have to like constantly remind yourself of that because, I mean, a good example would be, you mentioned the social media stuff, right? Like if you're told post regularly, the algorithm, you got to feed the beast, And then am I feeding the wrong beast? Because it's not just I hate doing it, but what if you, like, I remember a long time ago, and I know you mentioned Ali Abdal in the book, I think at the tail end of the book, right? Like Ali. And I remember when there was a few other productivity people, and I did this early on, where it was all about the apps. If we post about apps and we post about these apps, then we're going to get the views. But and I felt the pull of that. But I'm like, I don't want to do that. If I do that, then I'm going to be chasing Notion and all these different apps. And all of a sudden I ended up way over here when I didn't want to go over there. Because that's the other thing too, and that's a form of regression, right? Because to me, that's not going in the direction that I intended to go in, right?
Well, not only that, but there's a question we're not asking. And this is the one that I've learned the hardest and had to learn repeatedly over and over and over is we if we pick the wrong goal or we're expecting a certain outcome, we tell ourselves like I'm willing to do this thing to reach this thing that I don't like to reach that goal. The question we're not asking is like, what if this works? Right?
Yeah.
Like, if it actually works, the reward is that you have to keep doing it. And if you don't like Instagram, getting really good at Instagram, the reward is that you have to keep doing Instagram. Sure, people you'd be like, oh, well, then I can hire somebody to do the Instagram. It's not going to be the same. I can hire somebody to answer the comments. I can hire a film crew and whatever. Then all of a sudden, you're still doing the thing that you don't like, but now you have the weight of a staff and people, and now all of a sudden your schedule is not your own. I think so many people forget to ask, like, not just like, well, what if it doesn't work, or how do I get there faster? But like, what if this works? In the book, I say like, don't just ask like, is the juice worth the squeeze? But ask like, do I even like juice? Right? Like, if you don't like juice, then you don't need to go that path. And I've had to learn this lesson repeatedly. Like I said, I started Nerd Fitness as a writer. I love writing. It's what probably how you found me, either through maybe Art of Manliness, another fellow writer, and Brett McKay, or somebody shared my essay somewhere and we connected. And over time, like maybe wait a second, there are these services and things that people are asking of me. Nobody else is doing it. I can do that. Okay, fine. Well, I need to hire people for that. Okay, let's hire people. And eventually I found myself in charge of a team of 40, 45, 50 people, somewhere in there. And I started avoiding work. Like, I didn't want to do my job of the company that I built with the job that I hand created for myself. And eventually I realized that I was trying to get better at something that I actually hated. And that was managing people and shaping the trajectory of a business and spending all this time in meetings. And what I wasn't doing anymore was writing. So the only reason this book got written was because I effectively demoted and then fired myself and took huge steps back and said, like, wait a second, I have to pause. I have to accept my reality and who I am, which is that I'm just a nerd that loves to write. And I like nothing makes me happier than connecting concepts and writing about it in a fun, nerdy way. I have to change something, which is firing myself. And then I have to try this new path with that expectation. And here I am 3 years later, uh, with this book sitting in front of me that I'm so proud of. It's the most Steve thing I've ever done. Mike, I'm sure you can attest to this, but it's just full of like really bad jokes and puns and self-deprecating humor because like that's who I am. But I had to accept that the thing I was trying to do and chase to feel enough wasn't actually what I wanted, and it wasn't in line with my strengths or weaknesses.
Yeah, it definitely felt like I was having a conversation with you. But it wasn't just like the nerdy jokes or the puns or whatever. It's the connective tissue that you interwove. We actually had a conversation in our community book club, Time Crafting Trust Community Book Club, about John Acuff's book Soundtracks. And John writes a very much like in a similar way, like he's connecting stories and relatable human kind of stuff, whether it's nerdy or otherwise, that people can relate to. And one of the things that you brought up in the book, and you just talked about acceptance, that I found that I've not come across in quite this way, whether it's a Steve way or any way, is the idea of normalcy, like back to normal. And I'm like, no one talks about that enough either, right? Like we talked about the pause and the what if what question am I not asking? This idea of back to normal. I'd love for you to expand on this because this is another thing that we just kind of fly by or float by and don't really pay attention to.
Sure. Not the excuse, the apology our coaches get more often than any other apology from people that are, getting coached by us is, hey, I'm sorry I missed my workout this week, but next week things should get back to normal.
Mm.
And then, unsurprisingly, next week, something else happens. And then the week after that, something else happens. And I tell this story that somebody kept apologizing, and one of our coaches, recorded this really kind video to the person and said, like, "Look, I don't know how to put this any more gently, but like, there is this normal you think that's around the corner. Like that normal's not coming back. Like you just became a new dad, or you're taking care of your mom with dementia now. Like this is the new reality, and that normal that you're waiting for to give you the permission to eventually be perfect again and fill out your perfect routine for the week or be perfectly productive. Like that normal is not coming back anytime soon. Sure, maybe years from now, but for the meantime, like this is the normal that we actually have, warts and all, hiccups, challenges, weaknesses, whatever it may be. So I think the acceptance for me around this is accepting that like whatever our actual day to day is, that's actually normal. We think normal is predictable and safe and routine. And for most people, especially if you have kids, like that's just not, there's no such thing as normal. And the sooner you can let that burden off of your shoulders of setting the expectation at perfect execution of a normal routine, then we can start to do like the actual messy work of, okay, what can we fit in here? And how can we let ourselves off the hook from this, expectation of, oh, but then things will get back to normal eventually. I actually think about this too. I found myself in nerd fitness burning myself out repeatedly because I kept telling myself, well, I'll just push really hard for 4 months and then I'll fix it. But then I can go back to a normal thing. But then, of course, 4 months later, something else would happen or I would fix it. And surprisingly, it didn't solve all of my problems and make me magically happy. It would be like, well, okay, then I'll just wait to the next normal thing. And eventually it came back to this acceptance of, hey man, like here now, today, like clothes on the floor because you forgot to fold the laundry or picking your kid up early from school because they got sick, like whatever it is, like that's normal. We have to work within those constraints. And that's actually really powerful because then you're finally able to do something about it.
Well, and we talked about this in the green room beforehand, like, travel and stuff like that I talked about. Like, that's a good example, right? Like, I mean, I can't wait for things to get back to normal. Like, that's part of the mentality. I'm like, well, what? No, I mean, post COVID, people, that's one of the things I've noticed, especially in the world of productivity, is like, okay, now that we want to get things back to the way they were or back to normal. Well, remote work's out of the, it's out there now. In fact, we were doing that before it was even in fashion, right? Like that was the kind of stuff that, well, with I mean, remote work, digital nomadism, that stuff was already happening. It just exploded because out of necessity rather than necessarily desire. But now it's out there. It's like, well, we're going to go back to the way. No, there's nothing's the same. Once we move forward, like again, the past is prologue, right?
Yeah, this is normal.
Yeah.
Like normal doesn't mean predictable. Normal means whatever today, like the average of our messy days, that's the normal part. And the sooner we can accept that, the sooner we can finally say, like, okay, within these ugly, weird constraints, how do I still get the things done that I need to get done? And maybe still have some time to do the things that I want to do and relieve that pressure of I must hold myself to the standard I used to hold back before I had kids, back before COVID, back before before I was trying to build a business while working my day job, or before I had to work 2 shifts or whatever it may be. Like the sooner we can get past that or accept it with compassion, I think the sooner we can finally get to how to actually be productive with the limited time we do have within that window.
Yeah. And I mean, we're going to get to the C, which is change, because one of the things we've had Anna Laura come on the podcast before, talk about tiny experiments, and experimentation comes up in the book. One of the things I actually looked at this week was as I was going through my paper planner, because we use digital tools as well for me and Sarah to communicate and make sure we're working asynchronously. But I've found lately that because I theme my days, there are some things that just I look at the week. Jesse Itzler talked about this too when he talks about word counts as a writer. And you give several examples in the book about writers and how they each have their own routines and how we live in this world. I mean, there's so much speed. We're on YouTube right now. Somebody like, I followed Brandon Sanderson's writing routine for a week and this is what happened. Or I mean, there's entire.
Did they magically become Brandon Sanderson?
No, they did not make over $1 million on their Kickstarter, no less. No,
Wow. I'm shocked. I don't.
But I mean, there are some interesting things you can try. Like I like the Hemingway method where he stops mid sentence, like when his timer goes off. Like there's certain tricks, but to be wholesale after these things. And so one of the things that I've tried to do is what Jesse mentioned this was he, instead of trying to write so many words per day, he said, I just want to write this many words per week. And this just goes to show the nuance of not only trying, but that this idea of changing and experimentation. Can you dive into some of this experimentation stuff? Because yes, Anne Lore covered it in her book Tiny Experiments, and we all fell in love with that. And she's super smart, and she's definitely got the scientist angle of it down. But I want to hear it from the nerd Steve aspect of how his experimentation works and how it's brought up in the book.
Sure. So actually, I've had a chance to meet with Anne Laurie a few times, and she was nice enough to provide a blurb for the book. But I literally pulled her aside and I said, like, I loved your book. I haven't read it, or like rather, I didn't read it while writing because I didn't want to. I didn't want it to influence my writing. I wanted to, and so my angle when I talk about experimentation in my book, I talk about it through the lens of there's a TV show I used to watch as a kid called Mr. Wizard, and it was this show where what I thought was this scientist invites kids to do these fun experiments. So they're going to fill up balloons with various certain gases, or they're going to test launching watermelons, or like making volcanoes out of with baking soda and whatever. Like it's like the fun experiments that made science look really fun. So that was my introduction to science as a kid. And I kind of like mix in the experimentation aspect of, hey, we don't know what's going to work. We're going to treat this like a non-judgmental experiment. And not only that, but like we can also learn from another profession. The way I look at it is imagine we're detectives, right? And we're solving like the case of past us. We get to look at the last time we tried to be productive or whichever strategy we tried to implement. And we put our Sherlock Holmes hat and get our giant magnifying glass and be like, oh, a clue, look at this. Like I figured it out. I was really productive for these 3 weeks when my when my boss was out of town traveling, and I could be really productive in the office. But as soon as the boss came back, then all of a sudden they were walking up to my desk repeatedly, or they were pinging me all day on Slack or whatever it may be. Oh, interesting. Okay, I now have a clue, and the next time I try my next experiment, maybe this requires a conversation with your boss or a conversation with your spouse, or you're going to try working out of a different location. Like whatever it may be, like treating it like a non-judgmental experiment based on past information. That's all knowledge we get to pull from, and we can try something different, right? Like the reality is, whether it's Hemingway stopping a sentence halfway through, or number of words each week. In the book, I talk about Ian Fleming. He flew to Jamaica every winter, and for 14 years in a row, he typed on a gold-plated typewriter every morning from 9 to noon, and then went swimming in the ocean, and then edited, and then crushed cocktails. And he did this at his ocean compound called Goldeneye. So super nerdy. That's where the name Goldeneye, the movie, eventually came from, was an homage to his compound. Like that worked for him. I do not have a Jamaican oceanfront compound named Goldeneye. I asked the publisher, they would not give me one, which I think is a little frustrating, but you do what you can.
You tried.
At the same time, I tried. I did try, and I had to try something different, right?
Yeah.
You then have Agatha Christie, who wrote 60 plus detective novels, sold like over 1 billion, maybe 2 billion copies of her books worldwide in so many different languages. She didn't have like a consistent place to write. She would like, oh, I write in bits and spells and bursts, and my friends never see me write. And I, like a dog with a bone, I spew it away for 30 minutes at a time. And like, it's just fun for me. Like, that sounds like the exact opposite of flying to Jamaica and needing to write every day at a specific routine. The thing is, both of those strategies work for the right person. So when you're experimenting, it's perfectly acceptable. I talk about it kind of like, you imagine you're walking through this buffet aisle, and there's different foods and strategies and things you want to try. Amazing. Oh, that looks good over here. Like, I'm going to try it and see if it works for me as an experiment. And you set a timeline. Hey, I'm going to try this for a month. And that month is not like, do I become Brandon Sanderson? But rather, it's, did this strategy work for me? do I want to keep doing it? And what did I learn about myself in the process? So the change aspect is like take all of the knowledge that we have before, like detectives, what worked, what didn't work. And then, like scientists, we're going to pick a new strategy and we're going to test a different hypothesis. And we can do so by sampling and picking the strategy from the people that we admire, the people that are like us. I think that's really important. We're not just emulating, the billionaires, or we're not emulating, the people that are running 2-hour marathons. Like we're emulating people who we know, who seem like they have a pretty good work-life balance, or they have their act together in a way that that we admire. And hey, we're going to try to sample that, and we're going to test it as an experiment to see if it works for us.
3 things. Number 1, I thought you'd bring up Batman as the detective, to be honest. That was a missed opportunity.
I just spit my water out.
Oh, man. Secondly, we're going to get into the comedy part soon, which comes in the T element of try. But I want to circle to what Dan says first. So first off, as soon as you started dropping Mr. Wizard, this came up from Dan, Professor Proton. But he also brings this up back to the idea of normal. And I do like this, the idea of it's funny, but I think my situation is getting where I can create the normal that works for me. And I think that's really interesting. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to kind of look at it, is that it's an embracing the fact that normal is, there is like normal is now, like you mentioned, this is normal, this is normal, this is normal. It's kind of like now, this is now, this is now, this is now. Like it's never static. It's always dynamic. So I like this idea of what Dan's brought up.
Yeah, it's redefining normal and removing the baggage and of the expectation that often comes with this hypothetical normal that we think is right around the corner. And it's when there's like unicorns and the sun is shining and our schedule is perfectly clear and everything works out. Like it's funny. I can't remember what I was getting done, but some renovation project, and the guy said, "Well, if all goes according to plan, this should be done in about 2-3 weeks." I said to him, like,
this was a contractor that said this to you, right?
Contractor, yeah, yeah. And I said, has any project ever gone according to plan? And he just started laughing. And sure enough, 6 weeks later, it was done. But it was not, because, we think like, oh, if things go according to plan, we'll get there.
Yeah.
But we set the expectation that according to plan, but in the history of plans, I don't know if any plan has ever gone according to plan.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about an accord is an agreement, which, I mean, according to plan is, I mean, so we're not agreeing. So it's not according. But interestingly, you bring up the idea of a contractor. And Nate Bargatze has this great comedy bit about contractors. I don't know if you've seen it or not. It's freaking hilarious. I love his stuff. And you bring up comedians in the part of PACT known as T, the try part. And that hit home for me, especially because I used to do sketch and improv and stand up and such. And there's a line where but like comics don't tell a joke because it's funny. They tell a joke until it's funny. And so it's what you've done with PACT is you've kind of like, it's both layered, but also cyclical. And what I liked about this is that when you get to that try level, there is experimentation happening, but it's the effort, right? And the willingness, like comedians. I mean, what do they say? The most people are most afraid of all things is public speaking, right? Comedians aren't just trying to do public speaking; they're trying to make public speaking funny. And so, I mean, you saw Taylor Tomlinson. I mean, it's such an interesting, and Birbiglia brings up something. Mike Birbiglia. I'm dropping names like people should know who they are.
I love that quote of his. Yeah.
It's so good. You have to outthink your audience and then make it seem like you're not outthinking your audience. And then you deliver as if it's this thing you just thought of. That's sort of the magic trick of it. So really quickly, and I'm not trying to toot my own, but as soon as you mentioned Sherlock Holmes, and I know you, I'm like, I'm going to bring up Batman. Like, I'm going to bring up Batman because that's just the way my mind works. And so you find the perfect, and improv works that way. You bring up yes and as well too. So can we dive into that idea of where, because I love when comedy comes into the mix.
Sure. I've never done stand-up comedy, but my God, do I love it. Makes me like, to me, it seems like the most vulnerable, purest form of of art. I live here in Nashville, Tennessee, birthplace of Nate Bargatze, and have got a chance to see him live multiple times. Um, I have seen, shows in Madison Square Garden. I've seen shows at the Cellar in New York City. I've seen shows, and just documentaries on comedy. Like, I find it so interesting because it's just one person with a microphone, like, exposed, sharing, like, some weird aside that they came up with, and with, like, getting crickets as a response, like, just hearing nothing sounds so terrifying to me. And yet, these people do it day after day. They get up and they tell the same joke, but they change it just a little bit based on audience feedback. There's like a slight pivot, or there is an additional pause added, or there is an aside. They change a word, or they change, and like, by the time we see this comedy specials on Netflix, those things have been tested and run through hundreds of times in hundreds of clubs across America. Yeah, I tell the story of comedian Taylor Tomlinson, who I saw at the Ryman here in Nashville. But the New York Times did this whole article chronicling the joke that she told when I saw her perform it. And she talks about how like, at one point, she changed the name of her best friend's fiance because, saying Todd was funnier than what the guy's, what his previous name was. So she changed it to Todd, and other phrases. And, Birbiglia talks about how you have to make it seem like you didn't come up with it, or like you just came up with it on the spot, but it is actually unbelievably polished, and like, part of the performance art is making it seem like you just came up with it and you're almost impressed by yourself that it came out of your mouth. Like, or surprised, or, befuddled or confused that it came out of you. But like, that's most of that is part of that performance. And I just think that is so pure. And the way I talk about it in the book is like, that's how we can be thinking about this attempt to try things. It's not just like, I'm going to try and see what happens, but rather there's probably signals life is giving us. I share this stuff about comedy, but I also talk about Pixar and how they have a brain trust. I had test readers to read early versions of my book, which was horrifying and was not good for my ego, and made me sad in lots of ways. But it ultimately made for an infinitely better book because they told me what worked and what didn't, and where they got confused and lost. And there were so many signals available to me that if I had the courage to say, like, I'm not just trying this, but I'm trying it, and I can try it and make adjustments along the way. Like, that is going to make for a better product. It's going to make me a better person. It's going to make the book better. It's going to help me navigate all sorts of things. So, I love comedy. It's woven throughout the book because it's something that I'm just such a fan of, and hopefully will continue to be.
So as we get close to wrapping up, Steve, I want to, like, once as you go through the book, you obviously go through those four elements, but then there's, okay, how do we use them in our lives? Like, how do we use PACTs in our lives? Like, what's the next thing to try? And I want people to pick up the book. So, but I do want to talk about the idea of the doom loop, because I think that was really a fascinating area of where I think we get stuck. And I think that's where the pause gets messed up, right? Like, so in other words, when that happens, and as I was reading, I'm like, oh, so this is where the trip up point happens. And you've got to get out of it so that you can go back to where you need to kind of say, okay, so can you touch on the doom loop, and just kind of go into it as much as, I mean, there's like definitely, I mean, you've dedicated a whole chapter to it, and I'm not going to go into the strategies that will probably work. We'll touch on maybe one of them, but I'd love for you to talk about the doom loop so that people can say, okay, am I experiencing this? And here's how I can maybe escape it.
Yeah, I mean, we've already talked very briefly about how all or nothing becomes all then nothing. The doom loop is essentially this 3 to 4 week loop that everybody finds themselves in. The most, like, the first step is feeling less than. And society, social media, our internal psyche, whatever it may be, has no problem telling us why we are less than. we're not fit enough, we don't have enough money, we're not productive enough, we're not good looking enough, we're not whatever it is, we don't have enough of it. But then we see the thing. I don't know what that thing is, but in each individual person, there is that thing, and it's the thing that is going to change everything. It's buying the new journal. It's buying all the new workout equipment. It's following the diet that The Rock followed to get in shape for whatever. It's following the thing, and we get irrationally excited about it, and we pile as much hope and expectation on it. We put it in our calendars. We tell people on social media. We tell people and how great this thing is that we're going to do. And for 2 to 3 weeks, things go great. And as we said before, we go all in, and then life happens. We're waiting for normal. So then we say, you know what? I have to stop. I'll come back to this later when things are less busy, right? And we go all the way back to the beginning. We're back to less than, except we now have the extra guilt and shame and sadness that we couldn't follow through once again. The challenge here is people often do this repeatedly and they keep trying to do the same thing, right? Like, yes, if you don't succeed, try again. But also doing the same thing repeatedly, expecting different results is as they say, the definition of insanity. I know so many people that are trying to run a 5K or run a marathon, and every year in January, they train for a marathon and they make it 3 weeks in and life happens. And this happens everywhere. So this doom loop is us moving through this repeatedly, piling more and more shame and sadness and frustration and should onto our shoulders. And the end result is we end up back where we started, just with even more of that piled on. So that whole chapter is about essentially the mental, I call them escape pods that we can take. Like when we're going around this loop, hop in one of these mental escape pods, get yourself out of this loop and start doing things differently so we don't fall back into these same old patterns over and over and over.
Before we wrap up the 10 strategies, let's talk about which one of those 10. Like, so you've got 10
Oh,
on the
man.
listed here. Think about the one. Can you think about the one you used most recently to keep doing the
Yes.
thing?
Yeah. So there's a whole chapter with 10 strategies that might work to keep doing the thing that you've picked. My favorite is probably half-ass the thing.
Which is
And
like the opposite of what Nick Offerman's character in Parks and Rec says, never half-ass one thing, half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. But you're saying, nah, half-ass them.
Yes, with apologies to Ron Swanson.
Yes.
I love Ron Swanson, and I never want to speak ill of the man, and I would never speak against him. What I'm saying is, I think this is the most effective way to treat that all or nothing mentality. And instead of asking, like, do I have time to do this? Do I have time to do this thing? Instead, the question has to be, how much of the thing do I have time for? And it just constantly requires us to change our definition, just like we did of normal. It might change our definition of what productive means for today. It might mean changing our definition of what a workout means for today. Like yesterday, my workout was 60 minutes and it was great. Tomorrow, I have to record another podcast so like tomorrow's workout might be half-assed because it's only going to be 30 minutes. But that's the most amount of ass that I can give to this workout. So as a result of this, it's perfectly acceptable. And that's like still a complete done day. So when you miss a day, when you don't think you have time for this whole large thing that you've set your expectations at, perfectly fine. Half-assed is perfectly acceptable. And I realize that sounds so simple, but we all do it. And if we give ourselves permission to half-ass something and accept that that is the amount that we're able to give on that day, like that's still a win. And it doesn't mean that we're behind. It doesn't mean that we are not making as much progress as we should be making. It means we did what we needed to do that day. Like, yeah, that's a huge win.
Steve, there's so much more that we could get into, but I want to be respectful of your time and those that are watching and those that are listening. One thing I will say is that one big takeaway I got from the book is that it basically, to me, showcases how much agency we have. Like in a world that doesn't seem to want to give us agency, you're like, hey, listen, and there's a permissiveness to it. You just mentioned like that last tip. It's hey, it's okay. You can do this. There's a permissiveness, even a validation to a degree. And I think that that's the kind of stuff that we need today, especially in a world that has so many demands. on our time, our energy, our efforts, all of those things. I mean, we could have gone into efficacy and all those things. So you bring up that as well. But what is one thing that someone can do when they pick up the book, which they can, as of this recording, they can pre-order it, right? And they can, we'll figure out where they can go, and we'll let you share that. But what's one big takeaway that you're hoping people get from the book?
Oof. Um, the chapter that I probably spent the most time on, and the one that I personally needed the most, is the chapter on failure. And I think we're all so hard on ourselves, and we set our expectations so high that when things don't work out or we don't follow through on something, we're really, really good at beating ourselves up. And I think the lesson I want people to learn is like, we're not failures when that happens. We're not failures. We're human and we failed at something. Okay, here's your hug. This is Steve giving you a virtual hug saying, like, welcome to the club. We're all humans. We're all weirdos. We're all figuring it out. And here's what we can do about it. So remember, pause, accept, change, try. Like you can do something. It's just setting your expectation at what you're capable of doing within the constraints of your weird, normal life.
Steve, I want to share this from Roxy too before we wrap up. I'm learning to play the piano. I've been at it 3 years with slow improvement. I think it's a lifetime hobby. I don't want to be got all the gear but no idea. I'm progressing slowly.
I love that. And I have a piano right behind me. Well, there's a few instruments hanging behind me. I love to play music as well, very poorly, and it makes me very happy.
So there you go. There you go. Steve, thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. Where can people pick up the book and keep up with what you've got going on?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's howtotryagain.com. Uh, I obviously wrote the book myself. Then I put everything I could into this book, but I also did the audiobook recording myself. So if you enjoyed this, you're like, that Steve guy's a little weird, and I want to hear him read the book and tell the funny jokes himself. I did the audiobook and I had so much fun doing it. So I hope this book can help you. I'm also all over the internet, like pretty much anywhere. Just Google Steve Kamb. It's SteveKamb. Pretty easy to find. I'm on pretty much every platform. And I would be honored, honestly, if you pick this book up. I really think it'll help you. Um, I poured my heart and soul into it.
Thanks for having a productive conversation with me today, Steve.
Thanks. It's so great to talk to you.